The Jerusalem Bible, Genesis chapter 18. Yahweh appeared to him at the oak of Mamre while he was sitting by the entrance of the tent during the hottest part of the day. He looked up, and there he saw 3 men standing near him. As soon as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to meet them, and bowed to the ground. "My lord," he said, "I beg you, if I find favor with you, kindly do not pass your servant by. A little water shall be brought. You shall wash your feet and lie down under the tree. Let me fetch a little bread, and you shall refresh yourselves before going further. That is why you have come in your servant's direction." They replied, "Do as you say." Abraham hastened to the tent to find Sarah. "Hurry," he said, knead 3 bushels of flour and make loaves." Then running to the cattle, Abraham took a fine and tender calf and gave it to the servant, who hurried to prepare it. Then taking cream, milk, and the calf he had prepared, he laid all before them, and they ate while he remained standing near them under the tree. "Where is your wife Sarah?" they asked him. "She is in the tent," he replied. Then his guest said, "I shall visit you again next year without fail, and your wife will then have a son." Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well on in years, and Sarah had ceased to have her monthly periods. So Sarah laughed to herself, thinking, "Now that I am past the age of childbearing and my husband is an old man, is pleasure to come my way again?" But Yahweh asked Abram, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Am I really going to have a child now that I am old?' Is anything too wonderful for Yahweh? At the same time next year I shall visit you again, and Sarah will have a son." "I did not laugh," Sarah said, lying, because she was afraid. But he replied, "Oh yes, you did laugh." From there the men set out and arrived within sight of Sodom, and Abraham accompanied them to show them a way. Now Yahweh had wondered, "Shall I conceal from Abraham what I am going to do, seeing that Abraham will become a great nation, with all the nations of the earth blessing themselves by him? For I have singled him out to command his sons and his household after him to maintain the way of Yahweh by just and upright living. In this way Yahweh will carry out for Abraham what he has promised him." Then Yahweh said, "How great an outcry there is against Sodom and Gomorrah! How grievous is their sin! I propose to go down and see whether or not they have done all that is alleged in the outcry against them that has come up to me. I am determined to know." The men left there and went to Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before Yahweh. Approaching him, he said, "Are you really going to destroy the just man with the sinner? Perhaps there are 50 just men in the town. Will you really overwhelm them? Will you not spare the place for 50 just men in it? Do not think of doing such a thing, to kill the just man with the sinner, treating just and sinner alike. Do not think of it. Will the judge of the whole earth not administer justice?" Yahweh replied, "If at Sodom I find 50 just men in the town, I will spare the whole place because of them." Abraham replied, "I am bold indeed to speak like this to my Lord, I who am dust and ashes. But perhaps the 50 just men lack 5. Will you destroy the whole city for 5? "No," he replied, "I will not destroy it if I find 45 just men there." Again Abraham said to him, "Perhaps there are only 40 there." I will not do it, he replied, for the sake of the 40. Abraham said, I trust my Lord will not be angry, but give me leave to speak. Perhaps there will only be 30 there. I will not do it, he replied, if I find 30 there. He said, I am bold indeed to speak like this, but perhaps there will only be 20 there. I will not destroy it, he replied, for the sake of the 20. He said, I trust my Lord will not be angry if I speak once more. Perhaps there will be only 10. I will not destroy it, he replied, for the sake of the 10. When he had finished talking to Abraham, Yahweh went away, and Abraham returned home. The Jerusalem Bible, Genesis chapter 19. When the two angels reached Sodom in the evening, Lot was sitting at the gate. As soon as Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed to the ground. I beg you, my lords, he said, please come down to your servant's house to stay the night and wash your feet. Then in the morning you can continue your journey. No, they replied, we can spend the night in the open street. But he pressed them so much that they went home with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking unleavened bread, and they ate. They had not gone to bed when the house was surrounded by men of the town. The men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people without exception. Calling to Lot, they said, Where are the men who came to you tonight? Send them out to us, so that we may abuse them. Lot came out to them at the door, and having closed the door behind him, said, I beg you, my brothers, do no such wicked thing. Listen, I have 2 daughters who are virgins. I am ready to send them out to you, to treat as you please. But as for the men, do nothing to them, for they have come under the shadow of my roof. But they replied, Out of the way. Here is one who came as a foreigner, and would set himself up as a judge. Now we will treat you worse than them. Then they forced him Lot back and moved forward to break down the door. But the men rushed out, pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. And they struck the men who were at the door of the house with blindness, from the youngest to oldest, and they never found the doorway. The men said to Lot, Have you anyone else here, your sons, your daughters, and all your people in the town? Take them out of the place. We are about to destroy this place, for there is a great outcry against them, and it has reached Yahweh, and Yahweh has sent us to destroy them. Lot went to speak to his future sons-in-law, who were to marry his daughters. Come, he said, leave this place, for Yahweh is about to destroy the town. But his sons-in-law thought he was joking. When dawn broke, the angels urged Lot, Come, take your wife and these 2 daughters of yours, or you will be overwhelmed in the punishment of the town. And as he hastened, the men took him by the hand, and his wife and his 2 daughters, because of the pity Yahweh felt for them. They led them out and left him outside the town. As they were leading him out, he said, Run for your life. Neither look behind you nor stop anywhere on the plain. Make for the hills, if you would not be overwhelmed. No, I beg you, my lord, Lot said to them. Your servant has won your favor, and you have shown great kindness to me in saving my life. But I could not reach the hills before the calamity overtook me, and death with it. The town over there is near enough to flee to, and it is a little one. Let me make for that. Is it not little? And my life will be saved. He answered, I grant you this favor too, and will not destroy the town you speak of. Hurry, escape to it, for I can do nothing until you reach it. That is why the town is named Zoar. And the sun rose over the land, and Lot entered Zoar. Yahweh rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from Yahweh. He overthrew these towns and the whole plain, with all the inhabitants of the town, and everything that grew there. But the wife of Lot looked back, and was turned into a pillar of salt. Rising early in the morning, Abraham went to the place where he had stood before Yahweh. And looking toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and across all the plain, he saw the smoke rising from the land, like smoke from a furnace. Thus it was that when God destroyed the towns of the plain, he kept Abraham in mind, and rescued Lot out of disaster when he overwhelmed the towns where Lot lived. After having left Zoar, Lot settled in the hill country with his 2 daughters, for he dared not stay at Zoar. He made his home in a cave, himself and his 2 daughters. The elder said to the younger, "Our father is an old man, and there is not a man in the land to marry us in the way they do the world over. Come, let us ply our father with wine and sleep with him. In this way we will have children by our father." That night they made their father drunk, and the elder slept with her father, though he was unaware of her coming to bed or of her leaving. The next day the elder said to the younger, "Last night I slept with my father. Let us make him drunk again tonight, and you go and sleep with him. In this way we shall have children by our father." They made their father drunk that night too, and the younger went and slept with him, but he was unaware of her coming to bed or of her leaving. Both Lot's daughters thus became pregnant by their father. The elder gave birth to a son whom she named Moab, and he is the ancestor of the Moabites of our times. The younger also gave birth to a son whom she named Ben-Ami, and he is the ancestor of Bene Ammon of our own times. The Jerusalem Bible, Genesis chapter 20. Abraham left there for the land of Negeb, and settled between Kadesh and Shur, staying for the time being at Gerar. Of his wife Sarah, Abraham said, "She is my sister." And Abimelech the king of Gerar had Sarah brought to him. But God visited Abimelech in a dream at night. "You are to die," he told him, "because of the woman you have taken, for she is a married woman." Abimelech, however, had not gone near her. So he said, "My lord, would you kill innocent people too? Did he not tell me himself, 'She is my sister'? And did not she herself say, 'He is my brother'? I did this with a clear conscience and clean hands." "Yes, I know," God replied in the dream, "that you did this with a clear conscience, and it was I who prevented you from sinning against me. That is why I did not let you touch her. Now send the man's wife back, for he is a prophet, and can intercede on your behalf for your life. But understand that if you do not send her back, you will most surely die, and all your people too." So Abimelech rose early next morning, and summoning all his servants, told them the whole story, at which the men were very much afraid. Then, summoning Abraham, Abimelech said to him, "What have you done to us? What wrong have I done to you, that you bring so great a sin on me and my kingdom? You have treated me as you should not have done." And Abimelech asked Abraham, "What possessed you to do this?" "Because," Abraham replied, "I thought there would be no fear of God here, and the people would kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is indeed my sister, my father's daughter, though not my mother's, and she became my wife. So when God made me wander from my father's home, I said to her, This is a kindness you can do me. Everywhere we go, say of me that I am your brother. Abimelech took sheep, cattle, men and women slaves, and presented them to Abraham, and gave him back his wife Sarah. And Abimelech said, See, my land lies before you. Settle where you please. To Sarah he said, Look, I am giving 1,000 pieces of silver to your brother. For you this will be compensation in the eyes of all those with you. At Abraham's prayer, God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his slave girls, so that they could have children. For Yahweh had made all the women of Abimelech's household barren on account of Sarah, Abraham's wife. The Jerusalem Bible, 2 Kings 4, 1-37. The wife of a member of the prophetic brotherhood appealed to Elisha. Your servant, my husband, is dead, she said, and you know how your servant revered Yahweh. A creditor has now come to take my 2 sons and make them his slaves. Elisha said, What can I do for you? Tell me, what have you in the house? Your servant has nothing in the house, she replied, except a pot of oil. Then he said, Go outside and borrow jars from all your neighbors, empty jars, and not too few. When you come back, shut the door on yourself and your sons, and pour the oil into all these jars, putting each aside when it is full. So she left him and shut the door on herself and her sons. They passed her the jars, and she went on pouring. When the jars were full, she said to her son, Pass me another jar. There are no more, he replied. Then the oil stopped flowing. She went and told the man of God, who said, Go and sell the oil, and redeem your pledge. You and your children can live on the remainder. One day, as Elisha was on his way to Shunem, a woman of rank who lived there pressed him to stay and eat there. After this, he always broke his journey for a meal when he passed that way. She said to her husband, Look, I am sure the man who is constantly passing our way must be a holy man of God. Let us build him a small room on the roof, and put him a bed in it, and a table, and a chair and lamp. Whenever he comes to us, he can rest there. One day, when he came, he retired to the upper room and lay down. He said to his servant Gehazi, Call the Shumanitess. He called her, and she came and stood before him. Tell her this, Elisha said. Look, you have gone to all this trouble for us. What can we do for you? Is there anything you would like said for you to the king or to the commander of the army? But she replied, I live with my own people around me. What can be done for her then? He asked. Gehazi answered, Well, she has no son, and her husband is old. Elisha said, Call her. The servant called her, and she stood at the door. This time next year, he said, you will hold a son in your arms. But she said, No, my lord, do not deceive your servant. But the woman did conceive, and she gave birth to a son at the time Elisha had told her. The child grew up. One day he went out to his father, who was with the reapers, and exclaimed to his father, Oh, my head, my head! The father told a servant to carry him to his mother. He lifted him up and took him to his mother, and the boy sat on her knees until midday, when he died. She went upstairs, laid him on the bed of the man of God, shut the door on him, and went out. She called her husband and said, Send me one of the servants with a donkey, I must hurry to the man of God and back." "Why go to him today?" he asked. "It is not new moon or Sabbath." But she answered, "Never mind." She had the donkey saddled, and said to her servant, "Lead on, go, do not draw rein until I give the order." She set off and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When he saw her in the distance, he said to his servant Gehazi, "Look, here comes our Shumanitess. Now run and meet her and ask her, 'Are you well? Is your husband well? Your child well?'" She answered, "Yes." When she came to the man of God there on the mountain, she took hold of his feet. Gehazi stepped forward to push her away, but the man of God said, "Leave her. This is bitterness in her soul, and Yahweh has hidden it from me. He has not told me." She said, "Did I ask my Lord for a son? Did I not say, 'Do not deceive me'?" Elisha said to Gehazi, "Tuck up your cloak, take your staff in your hand and go. If you meet anyone, do not greet him. If anyone greets you, do not answer him. You are to stretch out my staff over the child." But the child's mother said, "As Yahweh lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." Then he stood up and followed her. Gehazi had gone ahead of them and had stretched out the staff over the child, but there was no sound or response. He went back to meet Elisha and told him, "The child has not woken up," he said. Elisha then went to the house, and there on his bed lay the child dead. He went in and shut the door on the two of them and prayed to Yahweh. Then he climbed on top of the bed and stretched himself on top of the child, putting his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. And as he lowered himself on him, the child's flesh grew warm. Then he got up and walked to and fro inside the house, and then climbed on the bed again and lowered himself on the child 7 times in all. Then the child sneezed and opened his eyes. Then he summoned Gehazi. "Call the Shumanitess," he said. And he called her. When she came to him, he said, "Take up your child." She went in, falling at his feet, bowed down to the ground, and taking up her son, went out. The Jerusalem Bible, 2 Peter 2, 4 through 11. When angels sinned, God did not spare them. He sent them down to the underworld and consigned them to the dark underground caves to be held there till the day of judgment. Nor did he spare the world in ancient times. It was only Noah he saved, the preacher of righteousness, along with 7 others, when he sent the flood over a disobedient world. The cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, these too he condemned and reduced to ashes. He destroyed them completely, as a warning to anybody lacking reverence in the future. He rescued Lot, however, a holy man who had been sickened by the shameless way in which these vile people behaved. For that holy man, living among them, was outraged in his good soul by the crimes that he saw and heard of every day. These are all examples of how the Lord can rescue the good from the ordeal and hold the wicked for their punishment until the day of judgment, especially those who are governed by their corrupt bodily desires and have no respect for authority. Such self-willed people with no reverence are not afraid of offending against the glorious ones, but the angels in their greater strength and power make no complaint or accusation against them in front of the Lord.